It's the year 1200, inside a stone monastery in the dead of night. A monk rises from his bed, alone, in near total darkness, at the exact same hour he has risen every night for decades. No mechanical device tells him it's time. No bell has rung yet. And yet, night after night, for years on end, he never oversleeps. So how does a person, with nothing but their own body, wake up at the same precise hour, alone, in the dark, decade after decade? Long before humans ever agreed on what on time even meant, they still needed to wake up at the right moment, for prayer, for hunting, for guarding a fire that couldn't be allowed to die. And it turns out, the very first alarm clock wasn't built by anyone at all. It was already running inside every human body on Earth. Think of it like two invisible clocks ticking inside you at once. One is your body's internal sense of day and night, quietly tracking light and darkness and nudging you towards sleep as evening falls, then easing you awake again as morning approaches, on a rhythm that repeats roughly every 24 hours. The other is more like a slowly filling hourglass. The longer you stay awake, the more your need for sleep builds up, until it finally tips you into rest, then empties out again once you've slept enough. Together, these two systems can do something that sounds almost impossible today: wake a person at nearly the same hour, night after night, with zero outside help. Monks, farmers, and hunters relying on this alone weren't guessing. Their bodies had simply been trained, through repetition, to expect the exact same wake-up call, every single day, but biology alone couldn't be trusted for anything precise, and precision, eventually, became necessary. So humans built their first artificial solution, and it came from somewhere unexpected: water. In both ancient Egypt and Greece, water clocks weren't only used to measure the hours. Some were cleverly rigged as genuine wake-up devices. The philosopher Plato is said to have used a modified water clock at his academy, one built so that as water reached a certain level overnight, it triggered a rush of air through a tube, producing a loud whistling sound right at the hour he wanted to rise. It wasn't just a clock anymore. It was, quite possibly, the world's first mechanical alarm. Fire offered its own version of the same idea. In parts of ancient China, calibrated incense sticks were built with small threads suspended above a bell, each thread holding up a metal ball. As the incense burned down at a steady, known pace, it would eventually burn through the thread, and the ball would drop, striking the bell below completely on its own. No person needed to watch the flame all night. The fire was, in effect, watching the clock for them. And then there's a stranger solution, one worth pausing on for just a moment because of how unusual it is. In parts of 19th century China, some people reportedly wedged a lit stick of incense between their toes before sleeping, timed to burn down and reach the skin at the exact hour they needed to wake. Uncomfortable, unforgettable, and apparently effective. It's a strange little footnote in this story, but it makes one thing obvious: if ordinary people were improvising with pain and fire just to wake up on their own, how did entire institutions manage to wake up together, every single night, for centuries, without fail? This is where the monks come back into the story. Picture a long, freezing stone corridor, lit by nothing but a single candle, rows of narrow cells on either side, each holding a sleeping monk. Under the rule of Saint Benedict, monasteries operated on a strict nightly schedule, built around a service called vigils, or matins, held deep in the dark hours before dawn. Missing it wasn't a small mistake. It was treated as a genuine spiritual failure. The medieval chronicler Raoul Glaber even recorded his own private temptation to simply stay in bed rather than rise for the freezing walk to the chapel, a small, very human detail buried inside a system built entirely around discipline. Interestingly, some historians believe this same environment reinforced a pattern called segmented sleep, a first sleep and a second sleep, with a deliberate waking period carved out in between, almost custom-built for a schedule like this. But bells only worked if someone was already awake to ring them. So who exactly was waking up before everyone else, night after night, to make sure the rest of the community never had to? Long before any monastery bell rang, an even older system had already solved the same problem. Someone had to stay awake so that everyone else could safely sleep. Picture a Roman military camp at midnight, torches guttering along the perimeter, armored soldiers pacing slowly past rows of sleeping tents. Roman camps operated on strict night watch rotations, called the vigiliae, dividing the night into fixed shifts so soldiers could take turns standing guard while others rested. In ancient Egypt, temple guards maintained a continuous, round-the-clock presence over sacred sites, ensuring the watch never actually stopped, day or night. And in medieval towns, city watchmen walked the streets through the darkest hours, lantern in hand, sometimes literally calling out the hour as they passed beneath shuttered windows, turning themselves into a walking, talking clock for anyone still awake to hear. These watchmen were the ones keeping time in the dark. But eventually, simply watching wasn't enough anymore. Someone had to actually walk up to a person's door and wake them. And that's exactly when the watcher became something new entirely. Town criers had already been calling out news and the hour in public squares. Church bell ringers had long marked the hours for entire towns at once. But in industrial-era Britain, a much more personal version of this job appeared, the knocker-upper, someone paid to walk a fixed route every morning, tapping on specific windows with a long stick, or firing dried peas through a pea shooter at upper-floor glass, until the person inside woke up. Astonishingly, this job didn't disappear with the Industrial Revolution. It survived, in some towns, all the way into the 1970s. Which raises an almost comical question. If people were being paid, professionally, to wake up other people, what happened when even the knocker-upper needed someone to wake them? Underneath all of this was something bigger than convenience. In many communities, waking on time wasn't just practical, it was treated as a moral duty. Oversleeping could mean missing prayer, missing a shift, missing your turn on watch, and by extension, letting down the people relying on you. Waking up on time was never just a personal habit. It was, quite literally, a promise kept to everyone around you, and all of these threads, the biological, the hydraulic, the burning thread and falling ball, the painful improvisation, the watchman, the crier, the knocker-upper, the moral weight of simply not being late, all of it eventually converges on one moment. Around the year 1200, European monasteries began adopting early mechanical clock mechanisms, using a verge escapement to regulate falling weights with genuine precision, specifically to trigger the bells that woke an entire community at the exact same hour, automatically, without a single person standing watch. It wasn't just a clock. It was, in every meaningful sense, the world's first true mechanical alarm. For thousands of years, waking up on time meant trusting someone else to carry that weight for you, a monk listening for a bell in the dark, a soldier pacing the cold so his camp could sleep, a stranger tapping on glass before dawn. Now that trust has been handed to a small machine on a nightstand. But strip away the beep, and it's still the exact same ancient promise, whispered forward through every century since that first monk rose alone in the dark. Someone, or something, is watching the night, so you never have to face the morning unready.